There are 148 items in Dota 2, and it takes forever to learn them all. And even though most people don't ever at any point sit down and like try to memorize them like as if they're studying something from school, you just learn them over time. But even still, to learn them all is like kind of a monumental effort that you end up getting. And because of that, people feel like after they're done, after they learn all the items and all that, they're done. You know, they feel like, oh, well, I've pretty much got it all. I understand how to make them all and all that. However, it's not true. Sorry to tell you, but there's a lot to items, you know? Now, to watch this guide, I fully expect that you, at the bare minimum, know all the items. Like if I were to just show you a picture, you would know what it's called, what it builds into, what things build into it, where to buy the components, you know, basically everything that you could learn by just going into this items tab, you know, which by the way, this is a decent resource if you're just looking to learn. So that's like the minimum that I want from you before watching this video, okay? Now, that being said, there's a lot of items. We've got a lot to cover here, so let's get started. So, started with cheap items. It's important to get these cheap items, right? You have two resources in Dota. A lot of people just only think of it as one. We have two. Like in StarCraft, you might have like gold or Vespene gas and minerals. Here you have gold and item slots. You need to be using both. Obviously, people know to use their gold, but if you have empty item slots, you're being wasteful. There are some very cheap items in Dota. And granted, you know, it's the game's just started, so maybe he hasn't had any reason. These were probably filled earlier with different consumables, you know. But at the mid game, you need to be having full items. So, if you're a hero like Slardar rushing a Blink Dagger, for example, you should still have some full items because there's certain items that are just so cheap that the benefit gives you so big, so disproportionately big. You should have something. So the cheapest ones: Windlace, Magic Stick, Raindrop, maybe a TP scroll. Like, these are items that are so cheap that you should be using those type of items to fill in your inventory slot if you have nothing else to do. You'll find support players buy those items a lot because they have next to no gold, but they still want to be efficient. They still want to use their item slots. Okay, starting with consumables. Clarity, mana potion, we all know that, gives you a lot of mana. You have to be out of combat. When can you use clarities? When does it make sense to use clarities? Generally supports will get them, because generally supports will have some amount of time when they are just chilling in the lane. They've used all their mana ups harassing the opponent, and then they just want to get more. And they can actually stay out of combat for a little bit, okay? Generally roaming heroes will get it, because if they're changing lanes from bottom to top, if they're walking, you know, that's a lot of time to use this clarity potion, okay? Junglers will a lot of times use clarity potions. If he were to use his Nature's Call to make a lot of summons, he could be in combat and still be using this because he's not taking any damage. And the neutral creeps obviously are not going to disrupt this potion. Okay. Regen items. You got Tango, you got Healing Salve. Similar gold per HP healed between these two, okay? The main difference is how they work. This one's going to be for more high health targets, maybe melee heroes. This one's going to be for more low health targets, maybe ranged heroes, okay? Obviously, this one works in combat and this one doesn't. If you're a ranged hero and you have 500 max health, you can't really use Healing Salves because you don't want to let yourself get down to 100 health in lane before you use your Healing Salve. You know, sure, it gives you the full health healed, but you can die in that time. Also, a little more subtle, but if you're a ranged hero and you use a Tango, like say you're standing here, just a Necrophos, and you're last hitting, you can just back up to here, get a Tango, keep going, easy. Whereas a melee hero has to walk from here all the way back to here to get this Tango going. Melee heroes more likely to use the Healing Salve because of that, because they just have to back up to here, and they can get their full health topped off, rather than having to use all these Tangos to repeatedly move in and out. You can miss CS by moving away from the creeps that long. This is why it's so common to see players, especially mid laners that are melee, will grab an Iron Branch or two to go with the pooled Tangos. Because if you have an Iron Branch, then you can actually use the Tango right next to yourself. If you're just last hitting on the wave, you can just Iron Branch on the ground and then use the Tango and you just start healing. This is important because
I had such plans.
You know, even though it's actually not that good gold to health ratio for you, it's all about the fact that you don't have to move away from the creeps. You don't have to miss CS. Fairy Fire, also technically a health restoration item. Not really though. It's burst health. Okay, this is the choice whenever you think you're more likely to make a play. Offlaners buy this item a lot because it's very likely they're going to be pressured. And this 75 HP just immediately could easily be the difference between life and death. Versus if you're like a safe lane carry, oftentimes it's a very overtime, long duration, harass a little bit, heal it up sort of thing. Fairy Fire's a bad choice on a safe lane carry because of that.
Dire just couldn't save that
Unless you have a moment where you make a play and the Fairy Fire makes the difference, then Fairy Fire is always the wrong choice. The 2 damage, while nice, this is just the side bonus, okay? On ranged heroes, the 2 damage is kind of decent, you know. 2 damage for 75 gold is about as good as it gets, you know. GG Branch is 50 for 1 damage, so this is obviously better, so it's really nice. Melee heroes, there's an obvious choice that's way better in terms of last hitting power. You'll just notice melee heroes that farm are just gonna get this Quelling Blade. He's not right, melee. Alright. This Infused Raindrop, you can't get it till the 3-minute mark. This is just an amazing item how it is. It gives you a huge amount of mana regen. 0.85 is like usually getting close to double for a lot of early game, like low int heroes. This guy has, let's look at this Ring of Aquila is a 1,000 gold item, comes Ring of Basilius, 500 gold item, gives 0.65, right? And this is 0.85 for only 200. And then not only that, the HP is really good, right? This is 5 times 120, so it's 600 health. Technically, that number is pre-magic reduction, so it's actually more like it comes out to 450 health, because you have this 25% magic resistance. Even still, 225 gold for 450 health. If you were to get somehow no mana out of this, which is never going to happen, you're always going to get a lot of mana out of this, you actually still get some decent health out of it, right? Because not only is it giving you a lot of health per gold, obviously worse than these 2 regen items, but still a decent amount, it's also instant, you know? This block happens in battle, and you just have that much more health in battle. It's not like you have to be outside of battle for this to work. This can happen once or twice in battle sometimes. You can get like 2 procs of it. I mean, that's easily going to be the difference between life or death if this procs twice in a battle. Alright, cheap stat items. These all really good. Each give 12 stats, you know, divvied up in different ways. These 3 give 3 damage. This one gives the ability. Generally, if you want to get only one of them, the magic wand's better. But these build into other things, so sometimes these will be the better choice if you plan on building the thing they go into. As I mentioned in a previous chapter, 12 stats is a lot. This is like the equivalent of about 2 levels worth of stats. So, you know, for 500 gold, that's very, very good. There's a period of time where Magic Wand was bought on every hero in every circumstance, always. So, it's one of the more cost-effective items that exist. Detection. Basically, you have Dust of Appearance, you have Wards, you have Gem. You also have Necro Book, but that one's generally more bought if it already works on your hero. So, Dust you get if you're like hunting someone else. Like if you're a Spirit Breaker and you want to kill the Ricky, you hold Dust on you so you can kill him. If you are a support and it's kind of more defensive, that's when you get the Sentry Wards. Gem is bought if you think that you will not die, basically. Gem is obviously the best, but obviously if you die with it, again, it's the worst. It's the only one that you lose on death. So how do you know if you're not gonna die? Obviously Gem gives you some counter warding ability, and high level supports have a pretty good ability to stay out of combat, so they can actually make a lot of use out of this Gem. But basically, if I look at the opponent's draft and I notice they have 3 Invis heroes or more, and by the way Shadowblade counts, then that's Gem. You can get a Gem, any hero, any role, and you can just tell your allies, group up, let's just push down mid, bottom, take every outer tower. Because if you have Gem and their allies, their team is that much invested in the Invis, this will just be removing so much power from their team that you will win every battle. Now, that's with 3 or more. With 2 or more, it's like, that's when it's borderline, right? 2 or more, you will have a huge advantage in every battle, but you might not guaranteed win every battle. I still might get a Gem if I have 2 more. If I'm like ahead, too. If there's enemy team has like, maybe a Weaver and a Slark. 1 Invis, probably not worth getting a Gem just for that 1 Invis. Obviously, there's the Caudal and the Night Stalker sort of examples where they have the full daytime vision. That's a little different. you know, you kind of know how that works. Full vision, you get the detection, makes it very easy to counter ward because you can see high ground with it. The important thing to note with that is the gem only gives true sight at 900 range, whereas their Aghanims upgrades give them sight in 1800 range, so it's half of that. So you might be thinking you're totally safe, but you have to remember that an Invis hero could actually be kind of close to you without you seeing it. And it's also true for smoked heroes. Smoke is 1025 range. That's, you know, slightly bigger than this 900 range, but still, it's like about half of your Ag's vision range. Okay. And then Bottle. It's another consumable. You get it on the mid lane hero pretty much no matter what. If you're playing mid, you get Bottle. It's generally not really bought that off on side lanes. Sure, you know, the main issue is that, sure, you can get it in the side lane, but you only get one charge. It just starts with one charge here. So it's this dead-end item to give a ton of mana regen, but it doesn't even give you that much short-term magic mana regen because it's one charge. That's why it's generally not bought in the side lane. You have to get it, and you have to go to the rune and get the rune for it to be worth it. Generally in the side lane, you can have a more guaranteed option like Arcane Boots. It's going to give you more mana anyways. Okay, positioning items. Technically any item that gives you move speed could be called a positioning item, I suppose, but I'm specifically talking about Blink Dagger and Force Staff and Shadow Blade, okay? These items all kind of just move your hero, and they allow you to do things like get a Slitherine Crush on a hero that you wouldn't normally get one on, okay? Now, how do you decide between these, okay? Blink Dagger is generally better whenever you need to instantly move your hero from one place to another. Like, if you see a moment where multiple heroes are clumped, you need to be in that spot and hitting them with your ability instantly, okay? Because they're not going to stay clumped for forever. Whereas Shadow Blade might be better on a hero that wants a little more burst damage. It doesn't necessarily need... That was an annoying time for the director camera to go away. It doesn't necessarily need you to be in the center of multiple heroes, right? This is more of a single target thing. Obviously, Shadow Blade's gonna give you more damage for the gold, right? 2,700, and it gives you damage and the burst damage from the break damage there. 175 bonus physical damage on the first hit, versus 2,250 for no stats or anything. So when the Blink Dagger's worth it is whenever this is gonna let you hit like multiple hero stuns, okay? Hero like Tiny, actually, you can make the argument for both, right? He can hit multiple hero stuns, and he has this single target burst. So that's why you'll see a lot of Tiny players getting both, because they're both useful. Also, important, Shadow Blade gives you defensive capabilities. If you're being hit, you can escape with it. You can't do that with Blink Dagger. You'll find heroes that can do... There are some heroes that can escape with Blink Dagger, because they have a way of making themselves invulnerable and not taking damage. So those heroes you'll find very often will have way more emphasis on Blink Dagger because its utility goes way up. Wraith King, Templar Assassin, Puck, as a quick few examples. Ricky, too. And then Force Staff, the last item, not nearly as good as an initiation item. It's got half the range of Blink Dagger, about, and, you know, it's not nearly as good as, obviously, Shadow Blade's gonna let you sneak up on people. It doesn't give you nearly as much damage. Force Staff has, to counter all that, it has a huge amount of utility. Force Staff's generally the item of choice, too. With this upgrade, it has, you know, a lot of times people get it just because they want to upgrade it.
Radiant's gone and fortified their structures
with their Dragonlance, right?
Radiant's top towers.
I'm trying to click items and go at the same time, and I'm thinking about, there we go.
One last top tower.
Because a lot of heroes that build Dragonlance want something to go into late game, and this is a very good combo with them, okay? This is going to allow them to be maneuverable. Heroes like Viper, right, where you're just not very maneuverable, this will allow you to get away. Or a big example, heroes like Drow, where commonly in Drow lineups you'll counterpick them with a hero like Phantom Assassin. So the Drow always is going to get Dragonlance. It's an amazing item on her. Well, she wants to upgrade it into the full Hurricane Pike because Phantom Assassin daggers, blink strikes, so suddenly the Drow is very slow, and a Phantom Assassin is on top of her. Well, if Drow waits for that and then uses the active, suddenly the PAs, they're split up again. You can either do the Hurricane Pike on yourself or do it on the opponent to split you up even farther. Either way, all of the Phantom Assassin's cooldowns are in cooldown for a couple of seconds, and suddenly there's this big distance, so the PA feels trapped. You know? This works very well against heroes like PA, where it's a slow as opposed to heroes like Sven that blink stun.
Roche is done for.
Alright, so we already talked about Shadowblade and when to get that for initiation and whatnot, and mobility, and but we didn't really talk about the upgrade to Silver Edge. 2,400 more gold, gives some decent stats, 15 all stats, also adds 50 damage to break, also removes 4 seconds from the cooldown, making 4 seconds better. When do you actually upgrade it? Because the stats are nice, but they're not so nice that it's a guaranteed buy immediately. Sometimes it's better to delay it. Basically, it's against heroes with good passives, okay? Most people know that. The key is which passives, and it's the defensive passives. The strong defensive passives are the ones worth removing. Offensive passives pretty much doesn't matter. Most of the time you're going on them because you can already kill them. So if you remove Jug's crit, it just basically rarely matters. Versus, on the other hand, removing like a Bristleback's passive is gonna mean a hero that believes himself to be unkillable and tanky. He might be walking out of position, doing all this nonsense. Suddenly you just pop him. Okay, especially because the way these heroes build, Bristleback's gonna be getting stuff like Vanguard, where it takes small attacks and makes them even smaller. When if that Bristleback is gone, suddenly he just needs a lot of armor. Okay, so specific cases. First of all, as a side note, a Avernus or a Baden, you can remove the passive portion of his ult. This sometimes can be important. He can still activate it manually, but sometimes you can burst him because he's relying on a passive portion and isn't ready, so maybe one time a match. Or if you play a Night Stalker, you can actually use Silver Edge, silence him, then he has no counterplay. He will just die with no chance of triggering his ult. Oftentimes, you'll see a Baden skipping or Guardian Greaves or whatever, so they don't... Because they think their ultimate will bail them out, but then when it doesn't, they don't know what to do. Then they're not building the right items to remove silence. These two are the ones that most people are confused about because it has worked differently in the past. Both of these heroes have been changed over time. It worked one way in Dota 2, worked another way in Dota 1, worked a different third way in Dota 2 again after they patched it. So, simple, very simple. Silver Edge disables both passives, works for fully, never misses. It will just work, okay? It removes their passives. Craggy Exterior will not trigger first. Evasion will not trigger first, okay? Those are all Silver Edge. I'm gonna use Shadowblade and show that sometimes you can get Craggy stunned with Shadowblade. See? And you'll be stunned. That's bad because you'll be stunned, he won't be, and he'll just combo you. Now, one last interaction. A lot of people believe that you can never miss a Shadowblade hit on a Phantom Assassin. Notice this is Shadowblade. You can miss it, okay? Sometimes you can miss it, 50% chance. In Dota 1, you could not miss it. That's why people believe that. Alright, got that one. Miss. And it reveals you, too. Alright, another thing worth mentioning is Silver Edge, not just for countering passives, but also for countering Blade Mail. Cutting the damage in half. There's a lot of times with Silver Edge, you'll be an Invis hero, you want to get pickoffs, like an Axe or Legion Commander, that might be like a low enough health that you could get the pickoff, but they're going to do a huge amount of damage to you with their Blade Mail, and so it's like risky to even go on them, because you don't want like an ally to show up and kill you easily or whatever. This cuts the damage in half, and it includes Blade Mail damage, so suddenly Axe can't spin, and he can't Blade Mail, or he can, but it's like so much less. You know, not only... It's cut in half, and you know you're a hero dealing damage, and so the damage being returned is physical, so it's reduced that way too. Suddenly, the damage you take back is not that bad, so it's a nice way to just power through Blade Mail. This can be combined with Lifesteal if it makes sense in a hero, not so much Slark, but maybe like a Night Stalker. Alright, damage items. This is whenever you just need pure damage on your hero. First thing to understand is you generally don't need pure damage on your hero. You know, this is the sort of thing you get as a luxury. A lot of times you should be getting other things first. To properly battle in a team fight, you need to be able to not just deal damage, but also not die. Your opponent will be doing damage, and a lot of times in a battle, it's whoever just happens to be there last, still doing damage, is going to win. So it's a common mistake for new players to go too far into offensive items. That being said, your main choices: Monkey King Bar, Daedalus, and the Mjolnir. That's how it's pronounced, by the way. Grant. So these items are just going to give you a ton of damage on your right click, and that's it, alright? Obviously, between these two, Daedalus just gives more damage. This gives you True Strike. The other thing this gives you is this Mini Bash can interrupt teleportation. That's actually like mostly just ignored these days. That little factor so rarely means much in battle that you pretty much just, this is True Strike, this is more damage, okay? The build-up of Daedalus, you could argue, is a little bit better too. There's a little bit of mind games you can get by like building this so the opponent's less likely to build Butterfly, sure. Whatever. that mind games only really happens at high level. Generally, just if I'm gonna get Daedalus. If I think they're gonna get a lot of evasion, I'll get Monkey King Bar. Now, here's the thing: how much evasion does it take before Daedalus is more damage? Good question. The answer is about 30%. So, Butterfly, which gives 35, you will do more damage using Monkey King Bar than Daedalus to a hero with Butterfly evasion. Right? This is 35% evasion. Not only because you're hitting them all the time, but also you have to remember that when you have this this mini bash, this 160 damage, 35% of your attacks, that is magic damage. Okay, so that means it's being reduced by 25%. It's being reduced by magic resistance, but it's not being reduced by armor. Heroes that get Butterfly most of the time have obviously evasion, but generally very high armor. They're generally agility heroes that have very high armor. So this Monkey King Bar is almost always going to give you way more damage on heroes with Butterfly. That being said, it's sometimes the choice to get Daedalus. It's sometimes a better choice to get Daedalus against Monkey King Bar heroes. Sometimes a better choice to get Daedalus against evasion heroes anyways, just because you are hitting multiple targets, you know? Maybe you're a TA and you value the fact that Daedalus will give you the ability to, some of the time, just pop supports. You know, Blink, Meld Strike, they'll die if you get a crit. There's a 0% chance of that happening with Monkey King Bar. Okay, and then lastly, Mjolnir. In general, its damage is good. In terms of late game scaling, like this gives a lot of damage to Maelstrom. In terms of late game scaling, it's a little bit worse because it can't hit evasion, and the crit has this, you know, percentage based ability to it, which is gonna mean that late game it's gonna be way more damage. This is the right choice if you are if you need to kill multiple targets for some reason, which the main reasons of that is A, you're playing against a Naga, B, you're playing against maybe a Meepo, or you know, other illusion heroes, or you're up against siege creeps, or sorry, mega creeps. Then you just need to be able to kill a lot of targets. This becomes the right choice. Or Maelstrom. Now, Maelstrom versus Battle Fury, it's actually pretty rare that those two are options against each other because just different heroes buy them. But you could conceivably consider them as similar items because they both just give the ability to do lots of damage and give some AoE component. Basically, Maelstrom for ranged heroes, Battle Fury for melee. That's pretty much how that one works out. Battle Fury is going to be a lot more damage. Maelstrom, the advantage is it gives you a lot of damage for heroes too. Battle Fury really doesn't, but pretty much ranged heroes are going to get your Maelstrom. Now, this active ability, the Mjolnir, it is actually pretty strong, but the weird thing about it is that it's an item. The active goes really well on defensive tanky heroes, and the item is bought on generally ranged, high attack speed heroes that want to get out a lot of damage, so you have to put it on allies. So because of that, people forget to use it. If you do use it, it's very good, though. There's very few heroes, like Medusa might be an example, of a ranged hero that needs to put out a lot of damage that also tanks a lot. Now, Desolator is also like a purely damage item, but it's not really the exact same debate like between Daedalus and MKB. Generally, it's like between Daedalus and Deso, right? In terms of gold per damage, it's a complex question because it varies greatly based on how much armor the opponent has. But suffice to say, if the opponent has low armor, then Deso starts being the better option. Now, because of this, Deso is a lot better if you have other armor reducing items. So, say like Templar Assassin, not items, abilities, or items, but a Templar Assassin who reduces the armor with Meld Strike, this is going to be the better choice. The key to it is that even though this gives more damage per gold on a lot of matchups than like big or little crit, it gives less damage overall because it's just so much cheaper than Daedalus. So even though this might give you more mid-game damage, this is going to give you more damage at the late game. So you would have to end up selling your Deso and buying a Daedalus. So that's why for many heroes, the Daedalus is better if they don't have any minus armor abilities. The other thing is Daedalus gives the crit, which is unpredictable. It allows you to burst heroes when they weren't ready for you. This, while it's a huge amount of damage, it's predictable. You can see how much health you're getting chunked by each time. And if Daedalus has that crit where all of a sudden you take 2.2 times higher and just boom, you're surprised you can die. One little thing worth mentioning, obviously, Deso's going to help push it. -7 armor on buildings works. Crit does not work on buildings. Deso also works as a good combo with AC for the exact reasons I just mentioned. They kind of work well with each other. Deso does not work with lifesteal, which is one huge advantage Daedalus has. You know, critting on a lifesteal, really big deal. This obviously makes it so you can't lifesteal. Manta style versus Sange and Yasha. This, people don't really consider this a choice anymore. Most people these days just think of them as, like, you always get Manta. And Sange and Yasha is sometimes the choice, you know. Now, the obvious, Sange and Yasha is going to give you way more chasing power. What most people don't realize is how the stats are just a lot better for the cost. This is a full 800 shorter, and the build-up's much better on Sange and Yasha, all tiny components, and you get bonuses every time you update a little bit. You actually get more strength with Sange and Yasha, 16 strength versus the 10 on Manta Style. So a lot of people sometimes just, for whatever reason, just assume Manta Style makes you more tanky. It's because, I mean, the illusion kind of adds sort of pseudo-tankiness. The main thing to realize with Manta Style is that the illusion's damage are not that great. It's decent, but it's not that great. For it to be worth it, you have to have some synergy going into the illusions. So the main two types of synergy that makes it worth it are a passive that works on your illusions attacking. Big ones are like Luna's Glaives, Anti-Mage's Mana Burn. Anti-Mage actually gets the double whammy of his passive magic resistance. This works with the Manta Style as well. It's obviously, I think about everyone knows this at this point, but it only amplifies these things. This percentage is like damage given, damage that they do, 33%. This only applies to this first number, 128. So heroes like Templar Assassin, not so great with Manta. Most of her damage is going to come from plus 80 from refraction or whatever. Okay. Obviously, this will clear. Silence is the main thing, the main debuff that this removes. Alright. The other thing that makes Manta Style like a really good choice is if you're going to get synergy with Radiance. There's a lot of heroes who illusions have no Manta Style synergy, but if you get Radiance, then it's worth it. Alchemist, Naga. Actually, Naga has really good... She doesn't have a passive, but her splash... I think most people know about that. But the other one, I've seen Faceless Void. I've even seen just odd heroes like Centaur getting these Manta Style Radiance. These two items work very well. If you're if you're a hero that gets Radiance, maybe you consider Manta Style, and vice versa. Because not only does it give you whatever else, this gives you one of the most effective ways to farm safely in the game. You just get these two items and you send it out, and you're gonna get the farm wherever you want on the map. One thing that's worth noting that I think is interesting: whenever you get Radiance on these heroes, you a lot of times will get your Manta Radiance. You'll get a ton of gold. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's worth reconsidering whenever you're in this ultra late game scenario and have just swimming in gold. Sometimes it's worth reconsidering if Radiance Manta are the best choices at that point. You know, sometimes in an ultra late game, Manta or Radiance mostly just lets you farm more, and that's not like the most important thing because it's not going to help you too much with hero killing at that point. So maybe it's worth actually re-itemizing to make your hero into like this beast. Anyways. Alright, the Sange and Yasha and Scatty combo, this is like not really a big combo, right? It's pretty rare for this to be a thing, but people kind of get confused because there is a version in Dota where Bloodseeker, Juggernaut, and Troll Warlord were also all very overpowered, and they all built that combo. And the basic idea is that this gives you a huge amount of tankiness, a huge amount of chasing power, very little damage. So you have to have, it's a very specialized hero that that needs to be tanky but doesn't want to build BKB because they also need like physical resistance too. Like Bloodseeker, he's gonna amplify damage on himself. Just getting BKB would still be super squishy. So they need that, and they want the ability to slow people on a right click, Juggernaut, Troll Warlord. So there's a period of time, and the heroes have to have a huge amount of innate damage. So it's pretty specific, you notice. But the fact that there was a version where the three heroes that were OP all built these items kind of makes people feel like this is like a good item choice for many heroes. It's not for most heroes.